Yeah.
Well, then I became a dog hater. And she wrote every congressman, the president, secretary of defense, and said I was a bad person. And they looked for anything. So this was in May of 2012. My blog I wrote in January. And so they found that and they sent it to every news outlet. And it said, he doesn't care about soldiers. And it's like, no. And it was based on that where people then said, you don't know anything about what it's like when a soldier's thinking about taking his own life. I said, really? Well, let me tell you about that. And so then I shared my own story. It wasn't to just say, well, look at me. It was to say, no, I'm intimately involved in this. I am committed because I know, at least for me, what it was like to think about taking my own life. So that's where that started.
Oh my gosh. So I often think how things would have been different if I would have just said something earlier, but how do you think it would be now for a soldier to tell his first line supervisor that he's struggling?
I don't know. I thought we were turning a corner at Fort Bliss, but I knew better, and that it's when one commander leaves, another one may feel differently, but we had to try to keep up that campaign. And I don't know if people still felt comfortable. I would hope they would. I know the military as a whole, some other installations took those lessons learned, but the Army as a whole still had this stigma that suicide was mainly caused by soldiers with problems.
Right.
So get rid of those problems. You can screen it out, and you can't, because it can happen to anyone. Right. We had the equivalent of the chief of staff of the Army, in the Navy, what's he called? CNO, Chief Naval Officer, who's a 4-star admiral. Well, in 1995, Admiral Borda, he killed himself while being the chief of naval operations. That was just kind of hush hush. I mean, it was made national news and it went away. So it's like, we all can have issues.
Right.
I would hope that things have changed, but I've been out for 5 years, so I couldn't tell you what it's like right now. But your husband's in, you've got friends in.
I see that it's often difficult. I think as soon as you get higher in rank, that you're supposed to be seen as tough, and so that's a lot of pressure. So that's why I think it's anyone who's listening needs to follow in your footsteps per se and make that change and not be afraid, because there's a lot of people out there that are afraid.
Right, I agree.
So I'm hoping that by me being so vulnerable, which was very scary, will make some sort of difference for other people later on. But we will see. We just have to stick together, I think. So
we had some big goals too. I mean, our goal was to be the most healthy, fit, and resilient community, not just in El Paso, not just in Texas, but the nation. So we were determined to have this special kind of community, and it revolved around this whole nexus of fitness, of resiliency, the environment. That's why we planted 20,000 trees, make it environmentally sound, so what you breathe in. So that was why the push for the renewable and sustainable energy, and so many things are just that I think the Army was just getting tired of. Certainly me, because it was just pushing, and then also being the best home station training platform in the Army. And so the towns that we built, because I was a former commander of the National Training Center, I use the same Hollywood movie set folks who helped build those towns there. We built them at Fort Bliss. We found the money to do that. And it's just a cool place to train. Fort Bliss is the largest training area, home station training area in the Army. You can fit 5 Fort Hoods into Fort Bliss. You can fit 1.5 national training centers into Fort Bliss. So once I took command and saw that, it's like, whoa, we can transfer this. We can transform this place. And most people, except the soldiers actually trained, have no idea of that. But that was a passion too.
No, there was certainly several enhancements made while you were there, and there's just so many things. We had the CrossFit. You opened up the new swimming center. It was just
Oh, can I tell you about the swimming center? Swimming
Yes.
center was going to go away. It was it had been planned for it's going to be 6 pools, and then the Army Insulation Command was going to cut it, and I got on a plane and flew to the Pentagon. I got a flight, flew to the Pentagon, and saw Assistant Secretary the Army, Kathleen Hammock, said, "Ma'am, we need this. This is all a part of our resiliency. This is all interconnected." She said, "We just can't afford it." I said, "Okay, so what can you afford?" And so it moved from 6 pools, I think, to 5 pools. And it's like, done, deal, great. She's a hero of mine now, and flew back. And so
Absolutely
it was
amazing. That's
a wonderful center.
It is a whole thing in there. I miss that place. There were so many things for soldiers there. It was amazing. Oh my gosh. So now, sir, you are the Vice President of Defense Programs for Allison Transmission.
Right.
And you've been with them since 2015. So how did you know that's where you wanted to go after you retired? There's a lot of us don't know what we want to do when we grow up, but you seem like you went here and you are doing there's defense products in over 110 countries. So how did you manage that? That seems like it's amazing. You're making such a big difference.
I was blessed with a number of choices. I mean, even though, there's a Washington Post article that came out really this month, 5 years ago, and I was on the front page of it, saying somebody leaked out, and of course the Washington Post picked it up, that I was given a reprimand for supposedly steering contracts to classmates. It's like, what? I mean, I helped testify against those classmates that I didn't even know at West Point. They were crooks. One was accused of 16 counts of fraud at 3 different Army installations. He was convicted, sent to prison. I was cleared by the FBI and everybody else. And the Army IG took it, and again, all the allegations. I mean, there's some serious allegations, like steering contracts to him, were dropped. But at the very end, he said, but there was a perception of favoritism. It's like, I never got a chance to write back, because they finished the report and just said there was a perception. So that perception was from the contracting officer, because one of my classmates from West Point, again, who I didn't know, said, "I'm a good friend of Dana Pittard's." So he got the contract. He should have never been given the contract. I had nothing to do with it. So that was almost laughable. But once something like that hits the news that, you got reprimanded for it, then you're kind of tainted. So when I decided to retire, I just thought, you Google my name, it still comes up. But I was really blessed with some wonderful choices in getting out. One was to be a senior vice president with Bank of America. They were going to take a risk on me.
Wow.
Airbnb, one of their co-founders, Jeff Gebbia, 34-year-old billionaire, flew me out, said, "Hey, why don't you take over our strategic planning, or what we're going to call Wonder Labs." Northrop Grumman wanted me to take over Vanilla Arabia in Saudi Arabia, which, after coming out of 2 years from fighting ISIS in the Middle East, I thought, and then I decided to take a course, an executive leadership course, 3-week course at Dartmouth in New Hampshire. And that was during my transition leave. And it was a course with 30 executives from 9 different countries around the world. And I had to pay for it myself. And one of the executives was from Allison. He said, I know you're looking at different companies, but have you thought about Allison? I said, "What's Allison?" He said, and we were getting on a bus. He said, "This bus probably has an Allison transmission in it." I said, "Really?" And it did. So the next day I got called by the CEO and flew me in, and my wife, for her to take a look at Indianapolis, which I thought was pretty slick on their part. And then went through 9 different interviews, and some of them were pretty tough, because at least 3 interviews, they brought out the Washington Post and said, "Tell me about this." And I was like, okay, I can do that. I said, no matter what, if I am hired, we'll take this place to new heights. but you got to back it up. So I, you know, you're taught all sorts of things as far as negotiation, everything. Like Northrop Grumman offered a lot for me to go to Saudi Arabia. Allison then matched it. So I was like,
Wow.
okay, I'll do it. And what I really liked about the place was on the plant floors, it was just patriotic folks. I mean, some folks had American flags tattooed on their shoulders.
Oh.
There's flags everywhere. And it's a conservative but very patriotic company. We supply 80% of all transmissions in the U.S. military wheeled vehicles, about 50% of the track vehicles, everything from the Abrams tank to 113s, JLTV, you name it, FMTVs, HETs, HIMETs. And we're now expanding our footprint around the world. So we're not just dependent upon the U.S. government. I love it. I love to travel anyway. So, but not everybody's that fortunate. But it's also a mindset. You know, my mindset even in the Army was not just think Army, think how you can solve problems. And I don't want to use that cliche, think out of the box. You think and you consider everything when you do it. So I've applied that same mentality to some of our problem sets here, and it's been working well. So yeah.
That's wonderful, sir. Wow. Congratulations on that.
Oh yeah, but there's some folks who when they leave the Army, it's like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do because this is my life. They're taking care of me. Yeah.
Right.
No, in fact, the healthcare system is great. I use TRICARE as secondary, but there's such a wide world out there. And for our veterans who are leaving the service like yourself or like you have, you'd be surprised what you can do and what you can contribute in any field. All you need is a chance.
Yes, I love that you said that because it is. It's that mindset that we're so used to one thing and we don't know how we're going to do it if we leave. So we don't think we can contribute to anything else because this is all we ever known. So that's absolutely correct. And I'm glad that you said that. So tell us about the book. I'm super excited. Hunting the Caliphate.
Yes.
It's amazing. So tell us, what made you want to do that? What made you want to write it with Wes Bryant?
Wes Bryant. Well, it started because when I came back from theater in 2015, there really was just a misconception. Even at that time, they were saying, yeah, we're losing to ISIS. And it's like, no, we're not. And folks did not believe me. I said, no, you don't know what we've done because we did this to ourselves in that in 2014, we didn't want the world to know exactly what we were doing as far as supporting the Iraqis at that time. So the book is basically this. 2011, we withdrew U.S. forces from Iraq. The Iraqi prime minister was Shia, very, very hard on the Sunnis, and ISIS was able to start generating from the Sunni provinces as well as from Syria. Eventually, ISIS had trained an army, and they took over in June of 2014. They took over Iraq's second largest city of Mosul with over 1 million people, and they ended up taking over a third of Iraq. And this was in June of 2014. A lot of excitement around the region and the world. And so President Obama wanted to be seen doing something because at that point, the concern was that Baghdad would be taken. I mean, most people just assumed that ISIS was going to take Baghdad. And of course, that's 2014. That's just 2 years after Benghazi, where, our ambassador, Stevenson, unfortunately was killed along with 3 other Americans. And so the Obama administration received a lot of heat, certainly on that one. And so, they said, we're going to do something. So they sent me and 100 people kind of figure out what to do to assess the situation. And I think it was within 24 to 48 hours where it said, yep, ISIS is going to come for Baghdad. But I think Baghdad will hold. And oh, by the way, now we have to go after ISIS. Well, the administration did not want to hear that. And President Obama was elected way back in 2008 and reelected in 2012 to get us out of war, as far as you're concerned. The last thing we want to do was to